Good evening and welcome to this Board of Education meeting. We are present in the middle school cafeteria. We have one board member who is attending remotely. We have our interim superintendent who will be attending remotely. We have some administrators here in the room with us, and we will have our CF educational consultants with us a little bit later in the meeting. And so it is 6:05, and I will ask our treasurer for a roll call.
Mr. Doherty?
Here.
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 I can't hear Kevin.
Can you hear me better now, Eric?
Yes, I am here.
Thank you. Mrs. Washburn?
The first item on our agenda is to adopt the agenda for this evening. And I would make a motion to adopt the board work session agenda as it is presented in board docs with 2 amendments. I would ask that it be amended to include a place for a board president update. I have received information, and I know that Mr. Doherty has received information asking questions about our minutes. So I would like to add that to a brief presentation, and I would like to add a place for our superintendent to update us on a couple of things. Those would appear as discussion topics 3.2 and 3.3 before we go from the treasurer update into the diversity statement. So that would be my motion, to adopt the agenda with 3.2 and 3.3 added in that way. Is there a second? Mrs. Washburn seconded. Words didn't come out. Okay, so that has been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Mr. Hawley, can we vote on that?
Dr. Lorenz?
Yes.
Ms. Pettit?
Yes.
Dr. Swetchnow?
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn?
Yes.
Mr. Doherty?
Yes.
Okay, before we move into those items that we've added, we first have a presentation concerning technology planning for the 2021-2022 school year. And I am not positive. Ms. Connor, are you, Mr. Ames? Who's on first? Mr. Ames. Okay, so our business manager, Mr. Ames, will begin a presentation on technology planning. Thank you. You're muted. Thank you.
Thank you. So as we move into the next year, one of the things that need to be talked about is, turn my microphone, is how we fund and how we bring equipment in the district. And is it, can you turn me down on these? Test. Okay. So I've provided you with quotations for the spring of 2021 for our Chromebooks. Historically, we have brought Chromebooks in during the summertime in preparation for the coming year. When we entered last summer, the Chromebook had dried up, the supply of Chromebooks had dried up completely. We are just now receiving Chromebooks that were ordered for the district last summer. So we are placing our order now, hoping they will arrive at some point in time before the school year starts next year. I've provided you with the quotations that we've received so far. I am anticipating a quotation from ComDoc this Friday. As you can see, we received CDWG, who is a very large supplier, nationwide supplier of technology for G being government. And RTI is a company out of, I believe, Minnesota. And then Forward Edge. And the prices are, as you see, I would love to see ComDocs come in lower. But I just wanted you to see what the prices were as of this date. What we are doing this coming year is we are realigning all of our Chromebooks district-wide. Last year, when COVID hit, we handed out Chromebooks just to get them out into kids' hands. We did not have a great system for keeping them by building, so they are kind of helter-skelter. And it's been a problem with Chromebooks because with the influx of them, they have been coming in as needed in areas or in buildings as needed. And it's not a way we always have done anything. We've always brought it in by grouping, by building. So with this 1,300 that we're looking at, this is going to be for the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So those children will have Chromebooks next year. The following year, we will be doing kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade. The year after that, we'll be doing 3rd and 4th grade. And the year after that, we will be doing high school. And the 5th year, we will be back at this campus again, refreshing this whole campus. So what that permits us to do is know where the machines are at, know what age they are, know what information is on them, rather than just having them spread around the district like they are right now. The machines that come in this summer are going to either be retired or they are going to be redistributed to the children that don't have them due to the retirement of the probably 12 to 1,300 machines that are ready for retirement. We have averaged 1,400 Chromebooks per year since 2015. And it's varied from year to year just because we needed to bring in more certain years just because we did not have a nice flow like we're trying to get set up right now. So the average is 1,400. This 1,300 will cover all of the children in grades 5 through 8, plus give us a cushion for breakage, for loss machines. Those will be residing in the media center. So if a student forgets their machine that day, or if it comes in not charged, they will be able to check one out from the media center. So this is our plan moving forward to every year come to you and just let you know what we're doing and make sure that you understand how we're doing and how everything is flowing. And yes, ma'am.
So I want to make sure that I understand. So all the other grades, 1 through 2, K through 4 in the high school, if they have a computer or a Chromebook now and they turn it in because it's old, doesn't work real well, these are going to replace some of those and redistribute here?
So the machines that come in when we end this school year, every student will turn their machines back in for us, which will be in the neighborhood of 4,000, 4,200 machines. We will remove those that are at the end of their life, set those over on that table, and the rest of them will be redistributed through the grades that are not receiving brand new this year.
Okay.
So everyone will have one, and it's just very difficult to try to identify ages of them now that they've all been mixed up over the years.
And then are these part of the purchase to lease or lease to purchase? Sorry.
No.
This is something totally different. Okay.
We are moving past the leasing option. Those children that currently have leased option or leased machines, they will finish out that lease over the next 4 years.
Theirs.
And then at that point in time, we will just be providing the machine and you bring it back at the end of the year.
Okay. So no more, they're not purchasing them any longer. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And I have one question for you, and it's the 4 vendors that you've identified here.
Yes.
How do you go about identifying vendors, and who do we ask? How do we decide who to ask to provide a quote to us?
These are, CDWG is one of the well-known vendors, so we always request a price from them. RTI, we started working with them about a year ago on projectors and then on the TVs. And so and they did a very, very good job. So we have stayed with them. Obviously, they did not come in with a great price on this. ComDoc, they are a local vendor that is mostly a Xerox copier machine company, but they are moving out into different avenues. The issue with technology is that it's kind of like the Apple computer model where there is one price. It doesn't matter where they get it. Apple is going to give you and you the same price no matter where you buy it from. In technology, a lot of times, as if you're the first vendor that says, hey, Lenovo, we have Loveland, we have a bid from Loveland, they will work to give them the best price. And then they won't give other companies the best price. So we try to not let these different groups know who the other one is. So they're trying to keep away from that being locked out. But you can see from the prices here, it is a market where Lenovo doesn't want bidding to go on within, or any of the technology companies really don't want a lot of bidding going on under their prices. They lock their prices and only give it to certain groups. Can you prove that? No, but it goes on quite often. It is a lot like the Apple model. So these
John,
groups, I'm sorry, I did not answer your question. These are groups who have inquired with us, who have come to us and said, we would like to bid on your products. We are interested in Loveland. There's others that have actually declined to bid that we've asked before, and they just said, no, we know we can't beat your bids. So they have declined. We have, at one point in time, we worked with not local, but Best Buy. They were interested at one point in time, but then they backed back out of that market. They realized that the margins were not such that they could make a living selling large quantities. Other school districts, like I was reading about Miami-Dade, they go directly to Lenovo, but they're spending $50 million a year for technology. So we work through vendors, local, and really RTI is quite a ways away, but as I say, they did a really good job on certain products for us.
John, this is Eric. Can you hear me okay?
My question was, how do we determine who to ask? I understand how we arrived at these four and how some others are not on the list, but I'm inferring from your comments that this is from experience. These are people that we've worked with in the past, that we asked them to bid.
Yes.
We don't.
Now, ComDoc is a new one. We've never used ComDoc before, but I have been talking to them recently, and they are now into this market. They use, as I say, they used to be Xerox copiers only. So that's a new one that we are trying to utilize. Really a big issue when you buy from someone that you really don't know is the quality of the setup that you will get. If these machines are not put in place and attached to our network and all of the software connections, then we will end up with 1,400 or 1,300 machines that we have to deal
How
with.
you choose a vendor is another subject, and I agree totally with what you're saying. I don't know what a big number is for Lenovo. Have we tried going to them direct?
They will not go to us directly. They refer us. We've talked to them. They refer us back to their retailers or their
and
wholesalers.
Do we do any checking with other school districts?
I'm going to say there's 8 to 10 school districts that are exclusively Forward Edge right in the Cincinnati area. There's a couple of districts that go with another very close company nearby here, and we have opted not to use them.
And my question, John, is a little bit simpler. It's do we check to make sure that we're getting competitive pricing by talking to some of the other districts?
No, I have not done that. I will tell you, I have not done that.
Okay.
I can do
I
that.
think it's a healthy kind of self-check if they're willing.
Sure.
Some people have a problem with doing that from an ethics perspective. No, I'm saying some people would have a problem sharing
Yes.
information because they might consider it confidential. But that's up to them, I
Right.
think, to
No, we all talk about, all the different school business managers, we talk about costs for all sorts of
I
different
think it would
things.
be a healthy thing.
Yeah.
To,
So the main thing, yes, the main thing I wanted you to see this, and I'd be glad to do that. There's no problem with that. It's just getting very, very close to that drop dead date of will we get the equipment by next school year. That's really why I'm bringing it to you today instead of at the business meeting.
Right, I applaud this. This is great. I understand what you've done here. I don't have an issue with it. I'm just suggesting that doing some assessment to just make sure I'm keeping everybody, so to speak, honest on.
Yes.
on
I'd be glad to do
whether
it.
this
And
would be a good idea.
I will do it, and I can provide you with that information at the next board meeting, or
Right.
maybe the 13th if I have it for our
That'd be-
facilities
that'd be
meeting.
Fine. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Any other questions?
So just to be sure, just to be clear, what we're doing this evening is seeing what you have so far. There will be a board resolution when there is a contract, or there does
No,
not?
it's just a purchase order for equipment. This is mainly just to let you know that we are seeking out pricing. It is something we do every year with purchasing of technology.
So there will be a purchase order in the future that will be made based on the lowest bid that came in.
That is correct.
John, this is Eric. Can you hear me?
Any other questions?
Yes, I hear Eric.
Eileen.
Eric
Yeah.
is talking. Can you?
Oh, sorry, Eric, I'm sorry. I can't see anything except your be kind, so I don't know if you're waving your hand. Sorry.
No, I didn't want to subject you to my background. John, I know that the pandemic and COVID, you alluded to the fact that we haven't been able to roll these out in a organized fashion. But from what I heard, it sounds like our plan for next year is to purchase new Chromebooks for 5th through 8th graders, and then in a more organized fashion going forward, kind of roll those through so that we're not using technology more than about 4 to 5 years old. Is that a good summary?
That is correct.
And then so the follow-up question, and I understand and don't take this as critical because I know how chaotic everything was last year. The 5th through 8th graders currently have Chromebooks, and some of those may be brand new, but we're just not sure.
That is correct.
Gotcha. And then, do we have any plans to try to? I mean, what are your thoughts on disposing of that equipment and trying to pick out what's worth keeping and reusing and what's worth disposing of because it's already old or broken?
As it comes in, the plan is to try to sort through it and get it in order of date of purchase to try to put the oldest equipment with the children that will get their machines next year, and then kind of stair step it up so that the high school will have the newest, because they will be 4 years off from now to get their new machines. It will be a real large task to sort the 4,100 machines that come in, but we pretty well know what they look like. The cases change a little bit over the years, so we'll do our best to sort them out in that fashion. However, if a student does have one that dies on them during the middle of the school year, we will always have replacements for them. So that will not be a problem, and each school has a lot of spares in case there is a problem.
Great. Thanks for the explanation.
Certainly.
Really a plan that's getting our kids future ready. So thank you for doing the research and getting.
Certainly. There has been a lot of people involved in this discussion. We have used a number of different models and brands over the year. We've used HPs, we've used Acers, and these 300Es from Lenovo are very, very sturdy machines. Last year we had their number is 100E. They were not touchscreen, and they were not nearly sturdy enough for student use. So we are phasing the 100Es out. We won't be buying those anymore. And the 300Es also are touchscreen, which make it really great for the younger kids because that's what they're used to. So we are, until Lenovo moves to their next level, 300E is going to be our standard for hopefully the next 2 or 3 years. Yes, sir.
John, just one other thing. I was just thinking about this document that you shared with us. Is this out on board docs now?
It will be.
It will be. So for the community
Yes.
that's listening right now, John, we apologize to everybody. We're all looking at a document John's prepared that has 4 vendors, their individual price quotes, 3 of which have responded, 1 of which has not as yet. There are reasonably solid differences between the 3 that have reported, and John will make this information public shortly.
And I will, excuse me, I'll update it when the 4th price comes in. So I'll take this one down and put the one up that will have the 4th price.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? I have one final question, and it may not be able to be answered this evening. It really doesn't have anything to do with the quotes and moving ahead with the work. And forgive me, you may have said this in what you reported. Do you have a sense of how many students use devices other than the Chromebook, ones that are their own? I would assume it's more at the high school than others. And if you do, great. If you don't, if at some point there might be a report to the board about what the situation is, how many students choose their own device as opposed to using the Chromebook.
I know the high school students do use, the high school students, quite a few of them do bring their own machines because they need the power of a high-powered laptop to do their programming, to do the robotics and those things. But I can't tell you how many. John Leif, I'm sure, has that at hand, and I'd be glad to get that for you and bring it to the next meeting.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Thanks, Mr. Ames. Okay. Then I think we're all right to move on to discussion topics, and the first one is 3.1, a treasure update. Mr. Hawley.
Yes, so thank you. So this evening, thought what would be the most appropriate conversation is to discuss and talk about federal grants. So I know that's been a topic that I'm sure people in the community are seeing, and it's something that we are very aware of. So I'll do my best to try to discuss each element of the federal grants. And so if you have any questions, please stop me, ask anything during the process. But the first 2 grants, really the way that you can look at federal grants is there's 2 main grants that we have received, is the Coronavirus Relief Fund and what's called ESSER. It's ESSER. And we actually discussed both of these at times during last summer. So we talked about Coronavirus Relief Fund in August and ESSER similarly July timeframe. But again, just to follow up. And when we talked about it last time, we talked specifically about Coronavirus Relief Fund and the first ESSER. So as I'm sure most people are aware of, the stimulus bills that have occurred, there have been 3 stimulus bills recently. So you had the CARES Act, and then you had the 2 more recent ones. And each of those stimulus bills had a portion of money going towards school districts. There's multiple things that were in each of those bills, but specifically how it impacted us was there was money coming to school districts specifically. So I'm actually going to talk about Coronavirus Relief Fund first, and we'll talk about the ESSER funds. So Coronavirus Relief Fund originally was required to be spent by the end of December of 2020. Our specific grant was roughly about $235,000. What we discussed originally was basically taking care of anything COVID related, and that's what this grant required. So any costs above and beyond typical that were COVID, because of COVID-19, that's what we were able to allocate towards it. So on our grant specifically, we used some of the money for personnel costs for midday bus route. So when we first started the school year, we started in a hybrid model, which required us to add actually a midday bus route. So we utilized some personnel costs on CRF. Additional substitute costs. So obviously we had some individuals who unfortunately had to stay at home because of COVID-related either symptoms or quarantine issues. We had some increased tech support due to increased remote and tech needs. And the remaining portions, about $150,000 worth, was primarily protective barriers, PPE, additional tech supplies to support remote learning. So for instance, cameras. So we've talked about synchronous and asynchronous learning. So those cameras were supporting a part of that. So those were things that we didn't necessarily have in stock originally.
Were the consultants part of that too?
So we'll get to that part. Yeah. So
Sorry.
no, you're great. So that was our grant specifically. What also occurred with Coronavirus Relief Fund was that local counties received money, and getting closer to the end of the year, they decided to disperse parts of that towards local school districts. Our buildings are predominantly in Hamilton County. We have one building in Claremont, so we did receive just about $17,000 in money from Claremont County. We received $221,000 from Hamilton County. And what we predominantly used those for was cleaning supplies, hand sanitizer, PPE, so the desk shields, signs, floor stickers, and the LJB contract, which was the pandemic preparedness contract. And we really split that up as best we could based on student population in each of the buildings. So all in all, on the Coronavirus Relief Fund, we received just under $500,000. So it's $473,401.75, to be very specific. So Coronavirus Relief Fund was much more directed towards COVID-related expenses. And I think what's really important about this conversation is, and this is actually what we talked about over the summer, is that we were going to look to be as efficient as we possibly could with these funds. My experience with federal money is that oftentimes they can have very detailed restrictions on them. So as we talk about ESSER was less restrictive than Coronavirus Relief Fund. So in my experience, it's always been the most prudent thing to do is to be careful with the money. We don't want to necessarily spend it on something and then have to come back and realize that we could have used it for another purpose. So Coronavirus Relief Fund was the one that we utilized first and foremost, since it had a much more narrow focus. So as we go over to the ESSER funds,
I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
no,
before
please.
you go to ESSER, did we leave any money on the table?
no, so that is actually expense. So that is cash expense. We have expended all the Coronavirus Relief Funds.
So all 470,000 were spent on COVID-related
Correct.
items.
And just in full transparency as well, these were not all general fund expenses. There were very minimal food service related, because to prepare food in a COVID environment is much different than a non-COVID environment. So we had to buy a cart to be able to push food down into schools, into the buildings. Also, we utilized the funds to take care of some of our permanent improvement fund expenses. So, John, can you recall any of those specifically? I'm just trying to think. There was like barriers, things like that, so things that would potentially be far more maintenance related towards the buildings that we utilize. You're fine, yeah. So just so in full transparency, it wasn't all just general fund. We tried to use the money as best as we could. The goal originally was to try to use as much general fund as possible. We obviously were up against the deadline, so we utilized it as best as we could.
But you were limited to using it for documentable COVID-related purposes, and that's exactly what you did.
Correct.
Right.
Yes,
All right.
correct. So moving on to ESSER. So the original one, again, was based on the CARES Act. We did receive that last summer. What we were going to use it primarily for was food service related expenses. As we discussed last year, one of the biggest concerns that we had was that our revenue for food service was significantly drying up without point of sale within the buildings. We also knew in a hybrid model that we'd have some difficulties with sale of food. We have seen what we believed would happen has happened. At this point in time, we have not expended any of that first ESSER money. The reason why is because we still want to see how that fund is functioning, the food service fund. So again, going back to last year, what we discussed was throughout the COVID timeframe, we received funds at times that we weren't necessarily expecting or knew that we were going to be receiving. If you have a student in school right now, as I have students in school, everybody is allowed to receive a free meal. That is not typical. You're only typically able to receive a free or reduced meal based on your economic status. But the federal government basically has allowed it so that every student who does receive a meal is considered free and reduced based on the old guidelines. So that did actually increase our money coming in from the federal and state level, because every meal is no, like we don't have a point of sale. We're actually receiving grant money. Yes, Kathy.
Can I just ask a question?
Please.
That is money that is not the ESSER.
Correct.
That's other money that came in to provide for those ones.
Correct. So when we did our original projections, we did not know that this was going to be occurring. So we have had increased revenue from a grant level, not ESSER related grants. And so we're just continuing to watch that account. Again, as we've talked before, funds in school districts, when you get outside the general fund, become more restrictive as to what you can use the money for. So we just want to be as efficient, as effective as possible. So we're continuing to watch the food service fund and seeing how much of a deficit we may see at the end of the year. But as we discussed basically 9 months ago, that's what the ESSER 1 money was going to be utilized for predominantly. There are some other COVID-related expenses that we can utilize. Another grant that we did receive that's outside of ESSER, but it relates to ESSER because of what we might reimburse, is we did purchase some Chromebooks. They're called Kajits. These Chromebooks have Wi-Fi built into them. So Mr. Ames, please, if I say anything incorrect about these Chromebooks, please correct me. But they are Chromebooks that we purchased because we received a grant called the Broadband Ohio Connectivity Grant. And it had a very, very, very specific purpose. And so these Chromebooks were purchased for individuals in the school district who may not have access to Wi-Fi. Yes. And
I'm assuming what you're saying here is that these are essentially cellular equipped Chromebooks for students that didn't have access
correct.
to the internet.
Yes.
And there's a grant
Yes.
provided to fund those.
So they have built-in cellular service and they are connected, so the children didn't have to worry about trying to pair them up. They were instantly paired. So it's a really interesting technology and something that would work very well in areas that do not have service, or the children do not have it.
So part of that was covered with the Broadband Ohio Connectivity Grant. The other portion, we are going to utilize ESSER funds. And again, I just want to reiterate, that's why it's so important, I think, in many ways to tread lightly when you're looking at federal grants, because we received this broadband grant that had a very, very specific utilization. So we utilized it, and then we're able to recoup the remaining portion of it with the ESSER 1 money.
And I assume if you, in the government's eyes, if we misused the funds, they have the ability to claw it back,
Absolutely.
make us repay it.
Correct. Yes. Yes, federal grants are far more restrictive. It's something that you want to be very, very aware of. So that was our ESSER 1. So again, we talked about the Coronavirus Relief Fund and ESSER 1 last year. Since then, there have been 2 more stimulus bills. The ESSER 2 money, we have received the allocation for it. It's just under $1.4 million. And the ESSER 3 money has not been allocated at this point in time. So we are waiting for that. What we do know about ESSER 3 is that roughly 20% of it is going to be required for learning loss and other similar items. So when we discussed at our last meeting concerning summer school, that's where it's going to be covered, is under the ESSER 3, because again, that's that restrictive nature of a federal grant, that 20% has to be utilized for some sort of learning loss or COVID, quote unquote, what they're calling COVID gap.
Kevin, you may have mentioned it, I missed it, but the
Sure.
amount of ESSER 1 money was how much?
It was just under $350,000. I do want to clear something up. In the summer, I did state that about 40,000 of that was going to have to go to private schools. We don't need to get on all the details as to what auxiliary money is or similar monies, but it was not $40,000. Where we did receive more clarification on it, that it was closer to $4,000 to $5,000. So our allocation was roughly about $345,000 that we were able to utilize for the school district. ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, they got us out of having to set aside money specifically for private schools, and they sent the money directly to private schools. So that is the difference. So at this point in time, when we're talking about the ESSER funds, we are aware of at least the amount of ESSER 1, ESSER 2. We are awaiting what ESSER 3 is going to be. We have had discussions as to potential areas of concern or areas that we can utilize the funds for. At this point in time, we have not expended any of that money specifically for that. So what could potentially happen is we have expenses that have been out of the general fund or some other fund that we reimburse towards these funds. But we are putting together a plan, and we're going to have far more discussions. And specifically, we'll have discussions a week from today with the Administrative Finance Committee team. So I know that was a lot. There has been a lot of movement during COVID.
I have one quick question.
Please.
The time frame. I understand you're saying that there's an allocation for ESSER 1, there's an allocation for ESSER 2, some sense of what the ESSER 1 funds might go to, but have not been allocated yet. Not yet allocated, we have not yet allocated what we've received for ESSER 1 or ESSER 2, and we don't know what we'll receive for ESSER 3. The dates by which they must be used, or are they all the same, or are they different?
Yeah, great question. So ESSER 1 is September of 22. ESSER 2 is September of 23. And I do not have all the details on ESSER 3 yet. And so one piece I wanted to just briefly discuss about the ESSER money, and this is significantly important for districts, and especially districts like Loveland. The ESSER money, as it was allocated to school districts, was based off of what's called Title I funding. Title I is another federal program that school districts receive. Title I funding is primarily based on either free and reduced numbers or what the state of Ohio calls economic disadvantaged percentages. If you look at Loveland, so you can actually look this, people may be aware of what's something called the CUP report. It's on Ohio Department of Education. If you look at fiscal year 20, the percentage of students that are considered economically disadvantaged in Loveland is 13.57%. The statewide average is 47.28%. So what's important to understand when you're looking at a Loveland as it compares to other school districts, if these funds, all three of these, ESSER 1, ESSER 2, ESSER 3, are based on economic disadvantaged funding, you may have a district that has the same enrollment as Loveland, but may receive significantly more money. And that's going to be purely based on what is their percentage of economically disadvantaged students. We do have students that are obviously economic disadvantaged, and but we are not necessarily on the high end of those students. So we obviously are aware of our population, but we are not a district that has high economic disadvantage. So when you're looking at a district that may look similar to us from an enrollment standpoint, they may have received significantly more dollars. So at this point in time, we have those two. Again, we're working as hard and diligently as possible to be able to take care of any burdens that may have affected our general fund, and honestly may positively impact the district moving forward. So again, we will discuss this further a week from today with the Finance Committee. Just kind of speaking to the community, the earliest that we would have any updates as to what the plan is would be the second meeting, our business meeting in April. Again, I don't know when ESSER 3 is going to show up specifically, so it may be a little bit more delayed, but we would try to shoot for something at the end of April. Are there any other questions on that? A lot of acronyms.
Kevin, this is Eric.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh.
We'll then move to part of the amended agenda, and with the board's permission, I'll go ahead and do a very quick. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Swetchenow.
Thanks, Kathy. I know how awkward it is to try to run remote and in person. I appreciate it. Kevin, I think you did a great job summarizing a very complicated subject. Is there a way to have kind of a summary of that we can include with the meeting, just where we are so far and what's yet to come?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I can put something together.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. Thanks for explaining all that. It's ridiculously complicated.
Okay, thanks, everybody. I would like to do, we're already running a little behind when we were hoping to have the consultants start with work on the superintendent search, so I'm going to make my report here very quick. Both Mr. Doherty and I have received some questions concerning the minutes, and on one hand, it might be very simple to talk about where the links appear for the board meetings, whether they appear in board docs prior to the minutes or whether they appear in the minutes. So there's one very simple issue of saying, should that link for the meeting recording appear before the minutes embedded in board docs and in the minutes themselves when you open them? And I think that's a fine thing if we want to put that link in both places. But there are more issues involved with the minutes that we've been asked about. The completeness of the minutes, how the recordings are available, when the meeting minutes are approved, etc. And so I am asking board guidance this evening as to whether the board would, number one, like the link for the meeting recording to appear where it does right now when you open the meeting in board docs. There's a link to the meeting, and then the meeting link, the recording link would also appear when you open the minutes. It would appear before the minutes begin. If that is desired, we can move ahead with that. And then I'm asking if the board would like a report at the next meeting, sort of a summary of where we've been with minutes, what legal counsel we've received, what we're doing now, and what issues might still be out there if the board is interested in making any changes to the statements that are on the minutes. So I'm just asking for some response this evening. Number one, yes to putting the link in two places, and or no, and yes or no to having a report concerning the minutes at our next meeting. That should be a quick survey of the board, I hope.
I think a quick report sounds like a great idea, just so everybody's on the same page and they know what's what. And I'm also putting it wherever it's acceptable to people.
All right. Ms. Pettit.
I agree with her. I think we need a report and put it where it's most accessible.
Dr. Swetchenow?
I know that Kathy, that you had some concerns about if it was included in the minutes, if a link was embedded within the minutes, that it suggested that that video also was reviewed and approved. And my thought was that that wasn't necessarily the case. It was just the link goes to an additional document. Do we feel comfortable about that if it's included in the minutes?
My suggestion would be that it show up at the heading before the written minutes actually begin, but it could also be covered in a statement that says what's being approved or what is approved are the written minutes, and that the link is an additional aid to understanding what's in the minutes.
Yeah, I think that sounds great to me.
Mr. Doherty?
I think we're all in agreement here.
Okay. Then I will prepare a report for the board for our next meeting, and we'll work. We have all been working. I know Mr. Doherty's been working. I know we're working on the website where these links appear. I know that Mr. Hawley has been working hard to get the links where they ought to be. I know that Mr. Lape works very hard to get the meeting recording links where they need to be. So hopefully we'll get that all regularized in the very near future. We'll then move on to superintendent update. Mr. Nevin, are you still with us?
I'm here.
So I would ask, I know that you have an update for us, and then I think you could lead us right into what is now 3.4, the diversity statement discussion.
I do. I just wanted to give you an update. It's been mentioned a couple times tonight about the website. We have narrowed the vendors down to 5. All of these are school vendors or vendors who deal with schools and websites. There are so many options out there. It's just a matter of trying to find the best option. But I do want you and the district to know that one of our priorities is to modernize our website and also add a mobile app, which we think is important because a large percentage of people now are relying on their phones more than their computers. So we'll be hashing that out over the next several days and hopefully again have something together for the end of the week, and then we can move forward with the appropriate approval processes and all. I did want to give you an update from the high school. We do have some information about graduation. We've learned that we will be on for our graduation as scheduled, but there will be only 12 adults allowed on the stage. We'll need to discuss who these folks will be. I realize there are some traditions on how the board passes out diplomas, and we want to make sure we honor that to the extent we can. We'll have 347 graduates spaced 3 feet apart on the floor. Each family member will have 4 tickets in assigned seats. Family groups will be spaced apart. Tickets will be given to students when they receive their caps and gowns. This information went out a week and a half ago to all parents. We're hoping that we'll have new guidance from Cintas to allow for more tickets, but obviously that relates back to the governor's updates, and we'll see where things are. At this point, we will not be able to have the orchestra on the floor because it violates the distance rules. However, we will have pomp and circumstance pre-recorded, as well as the choir performances and all. Also, we will only be allowed to have 2 speakers on the stage at a time. So we are moving forward. That's where it is right now. The hope, again, is that things will open up even more and we can expand to allow for more people, maybe on the stage and certainly in the stands. Any questions about that at this point?
Ask, what is the date of that again?
It is let me make sure I give you the right date. Andrea, if you can jump in here and make sure I have this correct.
It's May 22nd.
May 22nd?
Mm-hmm. Saturday, May 22nd.
Right.
And if I
That's
can
right.
just speak for the rest of the board, I hope I'm not stepping on anyone's toes, but my assumption is that the Board of Education is much more concerned about the experience for the graduates and their families than they are concerned about board members getting to sit on the stage or board member. I've always felt that it's been a great honor for board members to be a part of graduation, but I've also always felt that I'm not sure that any of the graduates have any idea what board members were present at their graduation. So the high school should just be sure that the Board of Education will do what is asked of them. But we would certainly hope that this is the best experience possible for our graduates.
So for planning purposes, that's the 22nd at 11 o'clock, and Mrs. Johnson will be here on the 20th to kind of give like an in-person kind of update to the board.
Thank you. Okay, and if we can move on to the DEI policy. I provided you with the draft at our last meeting. The intent is for the board to review, edit, and approve a diversity, equity, and inclusion statement. You'll notice in this statement, I made a note about a particular portion that relates directly back to the academic freedom policy. I felt like this was really good language that applies to this need. There are some other, we pulled from some recommendations from the Ohio School Boards Association. We took a look at what OEA has to say, worked together. We believe that this is a statement that will be powerful and inclusive, and is a good start as we continue our track along this work. So any input you all can give, my hope is that we can get board input and then take this back to the Diversity Advisory Board and essentially get their feedback and then bring a final copy for you in the very near future to be approved.
If I could just say, I think I saw that Mr. Doherty sent some feedback. I also had a couple of wording feedback, but before we get to those, I'll ask if other board members had any feedback back for this statement, or if they are prepared to see. I think Mr. Doherty could share his changes, and I really have just a couple. If there are other board members that have anything. I'm not hearing or seeing anything. Mr. Doherty, my input was simply in that last paragraph where it talks about strong public schools are the great equalizer, and education provides the foundation to change perceptions and attitudes. I would suggest that we might want to try a different word than change. In other words, we have perceptions, we have attitudes. I don't know that our sole goal is to change perceptions and attitudes, but rather to illuminate, rather to add to, rather to demonstrate a variety of perceptions. It doesn't, I don't have the exact words that should be in there. I'm just not sure that we want to make a statement that what we want to do is change, because there may be some attitudes and perceptions that we don't want to change. So that was one. And then I think what I saw from what Mr. Doherty sent, he captured the same kinds of changes to the 3 bullet points higher up in there. But Mr. Doherty, I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, I actually don't have the changes cross-referenced here, and I had a number of different changes to it. It might be best if I just post my document with the minutes and save some time there, so the public's aware of it. The board, I sent this to the board members just previously, as well as to Brad. I would just say, for the, if you will, for the record, that words, in my view, words matter if they're listened to, and if somebody takes the time to read them and to internalize them. And I went through this proposed document in part feeling that it spoke to what I believed well, but I also had concerns that people would stop listening at certain points in here. And I tried to make a few kind of strategic suggestions on the way some things are phrased to help ensure that everybody takes the time to read this to internalize it and to feel the power of it. So that's what's underneath my comments, and I'll just post those with the minutes, I think, and let it be at that.
If that's all right with Mr. Nevin and the rest of the board, I did remember that I had one other, Mr. Nevin, if you're keeping track of this, in that first bullet point, it talks about creating safe and welcoming learning environments for all students. I think perhaps it should say learning environments for all students and staff. We may want to include all of our constituents in that statement. So I also can post any of I have a couple of typos as well, so I can post that. And if you are comfortable then taking that back to the DEI committee and bringing it in an edited form to the next board meeting, we could adopt it then. Is that correct?
That makes sense to me. So to make sure that I'm clear, you both will post your comments. I'll take those and drop those into the initial draft, take those back to the Diversity Advisory Board, and then we'll have those on the next board agenda.
And I don't know if you guys can hear me okay. I'll add that I had a couple feedback changes, but I didn't know exactly where we were on this process. So I'll send this to you too, Brad.
Thank you.
Let me be clear, are we posting this in board docs, or are we sending this to Mr. Nevin?
Should this be this is now a document. Should it be posted?
The original document was posted, I
Okay.
believe, in the last meeting, and it is now.
But it's a work in progress
It's a
too,
work in
so.
progress. It has been posted on board docs in the form that Mr. Nevin provided us to begin with.
I mean, my initial thought was why not just post our notes? I mean, I don't, if it's a work in progress. That's all right. I was gonna say a lot of the feedback could just be grammatical corrections, and I don't know that people necessarily want to sift through that to get to the real content. So I guess I'd be more in favor of just sending it to Mr. Nevin and the DEI committee, and then looking at it again at the next meeting for approval.
Is that all right with
Mhm.
everyone? Okay, that's the plan we'll follow. Is that all right, Dr. Swetchenow? We're all sending in responses, and then we'll be able to see, and any member of the public would be able to compare what is currently posted on board docs with what the edited document that comes at the next meeting.
I'm fine with anything. It doesn't matter to me. I'll send it to Brad and figure out where it goes.
Okay.
And
Anything else on the diversity statement?
just for clarity, I had already sent my comments to Brad. I just sent them to Kevin for inclusion with the minutes.
Okay,
I wanted to do that because I didn't go into detail about all
Got
of this. It would have taken 10 minutes to read through all this. In the interest of time, everybody has seen it in this group, so.
okay. Mr. Nevin, do you have anything else for your superintendent update?
No, that's all I have, unless you have any additional questions for me.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Nevin?
Brad, I think I may have one or two for you when we get down to the superintendent's discussion, so stick with us, okay?
Will do.
Hey, Brad,
Just said it.
oh, yes.
You're muted again.
Okay, try again. In this, along with the graduation, are the seniors getting a prom also?
No.
I'm just
At this-
curious.
At this point, there is no prom scheduled. As it turns out, the capacity of Paul Brown for prom was almost equal to the capacity for the senior class only, which meant that only the senior class could go, and if they weren't dating someone in their own class, they wouldn't be able to take dates, essentially. And the cost was going to be prohibitive. But our wonderful senior parents have really stepped up. They have a lot of events for the students this spring, which we're excited about. They've really done a nice job of pulling things together. I think the students have met with the administration at the high school, and they're very comfortable with the decision to not move forward with prom this year.
But okay, I'm just excited that they're getting something. They
They
haven't
are.
gotten much
They're-
of anything else this year, so,
Agreed.
all right.
Okay, moving on to student representatives to the board. That should be very quick. All we need is 2 people who are willing to participate in interviews. That's all that we need to decide or have volunteers for this evening. We've sent the application. It has gone out to the school, the high school. So can I hear who would be interested in participating in interviews?
I've got homeschool.
Dr. Swetchenow, you unmuted. Are you volunteering?
I was going to say I'll do it again if Eileen does.
If Eileen does or if she doesn't?
Wow, that's rough.
I very much enjoy doing it, so I will volunteer.
All right, is it all right
Participate.
with the board if Eileen and Eric do it?
Yes.
All right, very good. On the Planning Commission, I just want to confirm what the board wants to do. This is simply a question. Are we ready to put out the previous application that we used for members of the Planning Commission? I have not yet heard, I don't think the board has heard how many members we might need to appoint. I'll ask if we've heard that yet, but is the board comfortable with the application that we have and allowing that to be out in the public and to begin to accept applicants for Planning Commission members? Or
I would like to revise it a little bit.
Going to step on there are a few issues or a few opportunities with the last one. Maybe keep a couple of questions in there, try to get different. feedback.
Yeah. I'm looking more for why. I want to know why someone wants to do it and what would help them participate, what would help them, what qualities that they can bring to the group already. What background do they have? That's what I'm looking more of that.
I thought that's what we asked on it. We asked
But it
what
wasn't
background they
clear.
had and why they wanted to do it.
As a regular person, I didn't think it was clear enough.
So is someone willing to work on that application? Are we turning it back to the Planning Commission? I mean, the more we talk about it and we don't do it.
I can work on it.
So Kathy, just a little bit of foundation for me. Time-wise, what time issues are we confronted with?
I believe that the starting date for each group is August, I believe is what we have in the constitution or the bylaws of the Planning Commission. But we do need to determine how many new members need to be appointed by the board, how many, we need to determine a number of things, but we also need to allow time for people to let us know that they are interested. So some of those things can be determined, but we really need to get a start on how we're going to look for new members.
So that's helpful. Eric may be in a better situation on this than I am, because he's worked with the Planning Commission somewhat during this last year. But all of this work, I think, preceded us by a few minutes joining the board, if I remember correctly. So I have to admit that I'm not terribly tuned into all the particulars of the decision-making around it. And because it is, I think it's really been a helpful structure for us, really helpful. And I would like to pay some attention to this issue. And I have maybe one suggestion is to bring some representatives of the Planning Commission into a meeting and have them talk a little bit about how it has worked, what issues they found, what recommendations they might have for us to consider in dealing with appointments and that whole process. And I think that would be helpful, to take the learnings of the last year into consideration before we make a determination on these things. It'd also give me a little bit of time to kind of get up to speed on the Constitution and the document that we use for assessing interest, et cetera. Eric, I don't know if you have a perspective on all that or not.
And I will just say that we have been talking about it for a couple of meetings. So that's why I'm concerned that we begin to act rather than just talk about it. Eric.
Kathy, your point is a very good one, and one of the hangups and progression has been, two people have stepped down and 2 other people have been appointed, and that's taken some of the pressure off of the need to add additional diverse voices to the Planning Commission, as we had talked about several months ago. The second hang up is we don't know exactly who's interested in continuing and who isn't. But I've been in contact with the commission, on a regular basis, and I feel pretty comfortable that they have the ability to either stay at the same size or increase if that's what we need. I feel comfortable that the instrument that we use to gather information to evaluate candidates is sufficient for purposes of adding new candidates. There were some concerns about the selection process, which I think that we can continue to tackle. And furthermore, the needs of the Planning Commission have changed a little bit over time as well, as we've seen, what parts of their group, I should say, as we've seen, where we need to focus ongoing efforts and where we've accomplished a lot of what we need to accomplish already. So that was a long way for me to answer. I totally understand your concerns, and I feel comfortable that we have the processes in place to do this in a relatively short time span. The one thing that I'm uncomfortable with is our ability to reach the community beyond the immediate school community, which, again, goes back to our communication strategy in general. So I'll have to continue trying to work on that to make sure that we cast a wide net of people who are interested in serving on that commission. Did that answer your questions?
Well, just to clarify one thing, the board does need to talk about whether the number of members is going to stay the same or grow. And then the second question is, there are a certain number of people on the Planning Commission who were appointed to 1-year terms. So the board either needs to determine, are they going to ask to be considered for another term, or do we need people to actually fill those 1-year term slots? It had been my understanding that some other people were considering stepping down. All I'm asking for is clarity on what we need to do. We need to find out if we need new members. We need to find out the process by which we are going to solicit applications for those slots. And we need to get started at some point. Even though the starting date might be August 1st, June and July are probably not the best times to be doing that. And that's why I'm asking the board just to make a statement. What do they want to do and when do they want to do it?
The perfect question. And the answer is our needs on the Planning Commission are not yet fully clear. So it's a little bit hard to.
You're talking, but I can't hear you.
Let me see. I'll keep talking. You tell me when you can hear me.
I can hear you now.
Okay, perfect. I understand your concerns, and I think the best way to answer is time is making some of those concerns more clear. And the group of people who accepted 1-year, 2-year, and 3-year terms were not necessarily beholden to serving out those entire terms. I will continue to stay in close contact with the Planning Commission to ensure what their needs are. And I'll make sure that I'm back to the board at our next meeting as far as changes that we need to make in the Constitution of the Planning Commission in order to make sure that we're fulfilling all of the goals.
And if I could ask Ms. Pettit to share with Dr. Swetchenow any issues that she might wish addressed in the application, if we can start working on that as well.
Kathy, do we have a copy handy of the original application?
I'm sure we can get one for you.
That would be helpful for me to review again as well. I've had it, but it's buried 6 months deep in email now.
I will ask Julie to send out a copy of the application to all board members. All right, anything else about the Planning Commission?
Again, I would just ask Eric and the board to consider inviting leadership of the Planning Commission here. I think it's just a really useful thing to hear from them straight on, and what their experiences are and what their recommendations are going forward.
Okay, well, I'm not sure how much progress we've made, but we've maybe made some. All right, then we'll move on to Superintendent Search, and I see that both Bob Summers and Bob Farrell are with us. They have been, I'm assuming, promoted from guests to panelists. Am I correct about that?
They are.
Okay.
We
I'm
are.
gonna turn it over to Stability then.
Thank you, Kathy, and welcome, Bob, and welcome, Bob. I see you both there. Thank you. Before, well, let me just go through a couple of quick things here before I turn it over to you guys. One, a little bit of housekeeping stuff here. Brad's been in the middle of a lot of the gathering of names for various parts of this process. We talked, I think, during the last week or so about makeup of the community advisory group. And Brad, I may ask you just to comment on how that turned out. What, maybe you can just give us a 30-second flavor of the folks that are on the CAG, not by name, but kind of what parts of the community are they representative of, to what degree, et cetera.
Sure. There are currently 16 members on the Planning Commission. That's been in flux to some degree based on the interests of folks that are out there. I believe it represents a broad cross-section of people. Just to give you some rough percentages, 19% are employees, 38% currently have students in the district, 50% have students who graduated from the district, 25% have students who have graduated from private schools, 19% are retirees, 38% are part of the Planning Commission. Another 19% are from booster groups, and 25% are affiliated with Nest. And while some of these folks may cover a couple different categories, we felt like this was a broad cross section, again, to give input on the process. And I am excited not only about the representation, but certainly about the individuals involved. These are folks who are willing to do the work and ask the tough questions and do the hard work of this critical search.
Okay, thank you. Bob, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to reinforce what Brad just said, because through Thought Exchange, we get to see a whole range of experiences in the responses, and we can see differences and likenesses, and there's a whole lot to that technology. And can you hear me?
No, not in the room too well. Can we boost the volume on that just a little bit?
Okay.
I think we got the core of it. It's just a little challenging hearing him. So they're fixing it
Yeah,
right
so how's that? Don't want to be shy. So I was just going to reinforce, we're actually seeing in the responses that we're collecting from the Thought Exchange that there are differences in the groups, and those are being articulated and noticed. There's samenesses, there's variations that you would reasonably expect in a very diverse group. So not only do you have them represented by different groups, but we're actually seeing different responses that then coalesce to their consensus levels.
Okay, and this is still in my category of housekeeping items, and then we'll move on here shortly. But I know we have a posting for the position out there right now. Can you describe for us where exactly the position has been posted, and do we have additional plans for posting it in other venues?
Yeah, it's posted in all the standard venues. OSBA is the only place that it isn't, and they only post their own searches. So you don't have that option, but we've got it in BASA. We've got it in ESCs in the area. We have an extensive social media distribution that's going to multiple states. So we're actually picking up people from outside of the state. Most are not interested in Loveland itself, so they don't apply. But we've gotten a really good cross section. We get a lot of questions and ask. Bob, you might want to chat about that because you get a lot of the calls.
We posted it last Monday. I've been getting a couple of inquiries every day. Bob has been as well. Most are very positive and really like the process, and really most of them have followed through. I think that they're excited about Loveland. They if they're from out of state, then they're kind of concerned about whether they want to relocate or not. So we have questions about that and the kind of place Loveland is. But we are really getting a lot of interest and continue. I've been talking. I should be texting with two of the candidates while this meeting was going on. So those are people just asking more questions, more follow-up questions. So there's a lot of interest.
Bob, these conversations, would you think of them as interviews, preliminary interviews, or just discussions? I can see Bob shaking his head, but go ahead and tell me the way you would characterize these discussions.
These are most of the discussion. Go ahead, Bob.
These are just discussions. These are just really, they're trying to feel us out, what kind of firm we are, feeling out what kind of process it is, what kind of place Loveland is. We are not interviewing them, though I'm finding out some fascinating things about them or their families at times. That's really not part of the interview process. We will have an intensive interview process and have begun to schedule those for the following week, even though the posting is not coming down, just because of the number of people that we're going to interview in a very extensive interview process.
And Bob, Kevin, in reality, we've got so many potential candidates, people of interest who aren't sure they want to be candidates, but they're willing to go through the interview process with us to develop the documents that we promised you as a board that we'd produce. That we're now up to 4 days over the next 2 weeks. The deadline is April 16th, but we've already got a significant number, and we're going to start processing them as we go. Right. We do not separate or rank or do anything with the candidates. We simply try to give you a great set of documentation that you can then see all the candidates and the potential candidates, the ones that might be of interest to you, but haven't actually thrown their hat into the ring yet. So the process is moving along very, very nicely.
Okay, I think towards the end of our superintendent discussion, we do want to talk about the interviewing process, getting into a little bit of a description of how we would expect or how we'd see that flowing. So I'll save more questions on that topic for a little bit later. I would ask you if you could give us a list of the venues, the specific venues where the position has been posted, so we can just make sure everybody here is aware of those different places.
Venues.
You don't have to read it out right now.
So the biggest one, the most prominent ones are two big ones in the state of Ohio is ESCs. So we've covered the ESCs that would be logical for that to occur. The extent to which they put that posting out is up to them, obviously. The other is the Buckeye Association of School Administrators. That's a wildly important one because it's all the superintendents and their chief operatives in second tier. Part of what we bring to you is we bring a pool that's already aware of potentials, and we know what their characteristics are. So those are already in. They're not postings. The other posting that I would classify as a posting is it's a direct connection to nearly every superintendent and school board within the tri-state area plus beyond. So we cover Texas, Georgia, Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio. So we've posted that in a very obvious way, and we get responses back from that.
So Bob, part of the reason I'm asking the question is that I got some feedback earlier where folks were not seeing the posting. So
yeah,
I just want to, do some due diligence on.
The only thing that we typically have not found much gain on is if you want to put it in the local newspaper. That makes people actually see it,
Right.
but that usually is not that doesn't generate much interest.
So if you wouldn't mind just sending me a list of those places that you
Yep.
just went through,
Yep.
and then
We
we'll find a place to make it public so folks can see and be assured about the expansiveness of the search. I think that would be helpful.
If you are a superintendent or a school board president and you haven't heard about Loveland yet, it would be odd.
Okay. The last thing, and Brad may want to chime in on this one, but I'm just trying to appreciate, I'm always trying to understand a little bit better how expansive our reach has been into the various constituencies to elicit their feedback, their perspectives as we go through this process. I think I've had a pretty good handle on how we've gone after the student population, the community part of it, the staff, et cetera. The one part I wasn't entirely clear on is administration and other elements of the community. I'm sorry, of the constituencies. So could you just comment on if I'm a senior leader in the district, what involvement have I had and will I have going forward?
Well, I would ask.
You want to
Go ahead, go ahead, Bob.
Well, we did have an administrative focus group, which we had extensive. I think we had a dozen of administrators that were involved in that, and then I believe that Brad we added Andrea Connor. I believe is on the CAG. Is that true?
She is.
But go ahead, Brad. What else were you going to say? I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say that very thing. As far as the rest of the constituents go throughout the community, I forwarded this out to the city, the township, townships. They've been willing to post this on their sites. I've sent it to the Loveland Mag. I sent the information for the Thought Exchange to the Loveland Magazine, the Loveland Beacon, to the Voice, to any individuals that I've spoken with through these coffee meetings. I've given them access and talked to them about using that, feeling free to put that on their Facebook pages, wherever they were willing to post it. The Chamber of Commerce, obviously. So I think, again, Bob could speak to this as far as the coverage throughout the community. I think we, again, had a pretty good cross-section in terms of who had the opportunity to weigh in, either through the Thought Exchange or through the surveys. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and I would say that typically search firms like ourselves do focus groups. So you would reach the 12 administrators, or you would reach the 5 or 8 or 10 or 15 teachers. You'd reach the students. You'd reach a group of community people that had gathered. You actually have multiplied that tremendously. The thought exchanges were very well used in large numbers, hundreds of people involved in that. Parents, students, community members. It was freely available to anybody. And so anybody that wanted to have a chance to provide input could have done so. And also you've created your community advisory group, which means that they not only got a chance to have their say at the beginning, but they're going to have the representatives that are going to be a part of the process all the way to the end.
Okay. I'm looking at some of the leaders here. Do you feel that there's been sufficient involvement, or do you think we need to do more?
I'm assuming you're asking those of us sitting at the table. I don't know if you can hear me.
You're conveniently across the room from me.
Okay, I'm like, I guess you're asking us directly. Yeah, so I do know that we were a part of the thought exchange. This team, I'm sitting here just looking at who's in this room. I know we had some building level principals who were also a part of the thought exchange. I do believe that once this process gets going, we really kind of need to see that there are some direct, I'm trying to take cues from my teammates, that there are some direct alignment pieces so that we can kind of see that it is progressing. It does get a little bit difficult sometimes to know where the process is. Obviously, we are not involved in any decision making in terms of that, but sometimes we are in situations where people will ask us questions and we may not always have the answers. So we would like to be able to provide accurate responses to what is actually happening in the process. So that's, I think, really what, I don't want to speak for my colleagues, but I think that might be where we are on that. So
I might, I might just say, from the time we started talking to search firms, and this was fairly consistent across all of them, they were fairly clear on the perspective that they report to the board, and the board needs to make the decision about the superintendent. Fine and well, right? But our perspective, I think, from the beginning, has been to have this be a very, very open process. Unfortunately, the one place where we, usually get to talk about it in some detail is in this room during one of these meetings. We have the longest discussions in here, and it's a long time probably to go between meetings to kind of drop down the status of those discussions. So I think I'm hearing you say that there is a need for more visibility on the process.
Yes.
So you are in a position, you are empowered to be able to deal with the questions that are going to come your way. People are going to stop you in the hallway and say, hey, what's going on? What's the status and what's the process, et cetera? And you need to feel more enabled. I think I'm hearing you say more enabled to answer those questions because you understand the process more.
absolutely,
Is that fair?
that's accurate.
I think Bob's going to
I
share
think
the
it's also
timeline.
kind of important
Sorry.
to see that what we've been going through is the essence of what we've been trying to go through is to build the profile. What's this person going to look like in terms of skills and capabilities and those kinds of things? A totally separate process than making a decision about who that person is. Right. We'll talk about the interview process, I think, towards the end of this section. But while we're on the topic, I mean, all of you that are here, if there's more that we should know, more that we should be doing, I think it's a good opportunity to tell us. And I think, very willing to listen and make changes as necessary here.
Not here.
I think you said that really well, Kevin. I think to be very transparent, I think the timeline is important for the administrative team, Andrea, and all that are out there to be very familiar with, so that they can talk to people about it. But you're actually coming into a time for the next couple of weeks where there will be a lot of rumors. I've been in districts as a superintendent or not the superintendent, but the next couple of weeks, there are going to be a lot of interviews. At this point, they're just candidates until they go to the board, they're just candidates. So that's how we have the process. So that's what many candidates are very comfortable with, that they do not become quote unquote a candidate for Loveland until the board selects them at the end of this month, after we give the profiles, the talent profiles of each of those people that we've interviewed. Then when the board takes a look at that, makes that decision as well as the CAG, then those people are active candidates. Then the conversations become even more. But as people rally around the different people that they'd like to be the next superintendent. So I'm just trying to explain the process, but in some ways, even though it's a transparent process, in the next couple of weeks, there's a lot of interviewing going on, and so you won't really see until the board makes a decision about who they would like to interview and who they'd like the CAG to interview. That's when those candidates' names will come out.
So,
And I believe, Kevin, I put on the screen the timeline. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Is that what, that's what you're seeing? What you'll see is that so far, it's been 30 days, 34 days since we started the process, and we can walk through and have anybody. We'd be happy to sit down with anybody or talk to anybody or go to any Zoom meetings that you want to talk through it. But you basically are down to what you're doing tonight. We were targeted for March 25th, but your April 6th is where you're going to be. We have advertised the position, and the potential candidate identification, and we use that term very carefully, potential candidate. They may or may not be actual candidates. They may not have actually put in for Loveland specifically, but they're very interested in the search. Potential candidates, internal candidates, current CFES talent pool, applying candidates. And then the talent evaluation is a very short cycle process, which happens in the next 2 weeks. And you'll see that has to be done by April 24th. And then production of the report that you get, a very thorough analysis of all the people that have shown interest in your school district. You then will have a review of that, both you and the CAG. So typically the board would be the only one to review these documents. We actually encourage you to include that community advisory group, which includes administrators and staff, as Brad indicated. And so creation of the candidate interview questions will occur at that point. That's around May 3rd, and you have tonight on your agenda the selection of the actual date. These were just recommended dates. Then it looks an awful lot like other search firms do, and that is the actual interview. You'll have a board interview. We're targeting somewhere around May 9th, but we will actually support you with rubrics, and we'll also support the inclusion of the CAG. So the CAG will actually be able to see and greet and interview and ask questions of all of these candidates. So you're going to have an incredibly diverse group of people that not only are looking in from the outside, but they're actually engaged on the inside and providing you with feedback as a board. Then,
please go ahead, finish.
Then the board interview of finalists. Typically what we see is you'll run, the big group runs 20, 25, 30 people up here at the level where you look at the potential candidates. You pare those down to 6, 7, 8, 10. There's usually logical cut points in the rubric scores. Those folks get interviewed. Then you usually end up with 2 or 3 that are very intriguing to you. You may find one and be thrilled with it and move on, but typically it's 2 to 3. And then we have time for both an interview of the finalist, again with the CAG, and you may want to have a second interview. You also will want to have some kind of community engagement where those finalists get to interact with the public in a public forum. COVID kind of restrict some of that, but you want them to be able to, the public to actually meet and greet your finalists, and then you make a board selection. Is that helpful at all in walking through the process?
Yeah, I think that for me is helpful. I look around the room and ask everybody else. You actually jumped into something I thought we were going to do later on, which is fine. That part is done now.
But
I suppose if anybody had questions about the interview process that's to occur, this would be a suitable time on the heels of Bob's comments to get into that. I can't see Eric.
No, I'm good. I'm good with that process. I was just laughing at my virtual background.
Are we talking at this point about actual dates or?
Not yet.
Not yet.
No, that was later in the meeting. But I sense that this would help. And you understand this hasn't changed a bit from the original proposal to the board decision to the notice. I think, Brad, you sent out an email communicating this exact set of sets for your administrative team, if I recall right, and then tonight.
That's correct.
I do have a question that's not related to the actual date, but sort of the amount of time required. In other words, when you talk about the interview, that first interview of candidates that might be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then the interview of finalists, and you just have one date there, how much time are you thinking about for each of those sets of interviews?
So first of all, the board can choose how long they want to take, but typically those 8 or 9 candidates, you've got a lot of background information, and you usually spend about an hour each one of those is typical. So usually split it over 2 dates. By the way, the date that's on here is our target deadline for completion. So you'll want to actually choose the dates. Typically, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, we're usually looking at 2 nights, two afternoons and evenings. It depends on the board members and their work schedules and that sort of thing. But and then the finalists, then you want to spend a little bit more time. So usually you have 2 to 3 finalists, and you usually want to spend 90 minutes to 2 hours with each one. But again, that will work with you on your questions. We still got to work on the questions. That's a process that comes later in the activities and how you want to structure that.
Okay, thanks.
Questions about the interview process? Good to, because if we're good on that, Eileen, you're good, and Michelle, you're good on the interview process?
I think so.
Okay. We can come back to it later on if you want as well.
You definitely want to set your dates, because you want to be able to give respect to yourselves, and also this community advisory group needs to know those target dates for the interviews.
So Bob, I guess each one of these sessions I've started with a little bit of a recap of where we've been, what we were trying to do, and a quick snapshot of where we're heading. And that's really what I was trying to get to in a way tonight, because we also had the benefit of more and more feedback at this point. And I wanted to make sure that we're listening to all the communities. If we need to change something, we need to know what we need to change. So I urge everybody, if you feel uncomfortable with anything that's been happening up to this point, to let us know, and we'll adjust appropriately. Overriding spirit of this whole process has been to engage as many people as possible, both in the formulation of the profile and ultimately the determination of the successful candidate. So we're still in a, I don't know, what would you guys call this? We're maybe about 30-40% into the process right now?
You're probably about 70% of the workload, but about 50% of the way through. If you finish your work tonight, that's a heavy lift. Now you're down to the questions and interviewing, and the heavy lift on us occurs between now and May 3rd or whatever the date selection is, as we try to document everybody that has shown interest or looks like they would be a viable candidate.
Okay. Any other comments before we move further here?
Is it possible to have that timeline? Can you send that to me?
Sure. I think it's in board docs, but we will send it to you separately.
Find it.
It's on your whatever your agenda item to approve us. It would have been in the proposal, but I'll send it to you, Michelle. No problem.
So any other comments from anyone before we move forward here? Say that part again. I'm sorry.
I can't hear Eileen.
Sorry, I just said I'm just concerned if we're only 10 days out from the close of the application, you said, right? Correct?
That's correct.
I'm still only seeing it posted in one spot, which is BASA. So I just want to make sure we have an opportunity to get the best candidates while not delaying the process at all.
Absolutely.
So is that a disconnect?
No. I'll double check with the status of the ESCs. The ESCs have their own schedule for when they put them up. It should be on Hamilton ESC, Warren County.
Will it be going up on your website and our website and places like that as well?
You have the information on the search on your website already. Let me double check that for you. Thank you.
Individual superintendents, Eileen, are also getting contacted. And that's one of the personal approaches that I've noticed from people that are contacting us, not necessarily from the BASA posting or a posting, but they're getting it individually themselves. They're getting that post, getting it to them personally. And I think that's where we're getting a lot of candidates.
So Bob, maybe this is where that list and the list of posting venues, as I term them, and confirmation that in fact.
Yeah, let me just get it for you.
I just want to make sure we don't have a disconnect on this.
That's right.
If we do, we adjust appropriately.
I feel pretty confident that we don't, simply because of the scope and range of where our interest is coming from. It's not in an isolated setting. It's a pretty broad array of folks that are contacting us or we're contacting them.
So I want to keep this moving here, but you're going to send us?
Yes. Yeah, I'll get that done for you.
And you'll tell us if there's any kind of a disconnect there that we need to respond with a change in the schedule, et cetera, right?
That's absolutely correct.
All right, Eileen, anything further on that? Okay, Eric, if you don't have anything else, I can't see you, Eric, I apologize. All right, I'm just going to move us along, turn it over to Bob and Bob here, because we're really going to focus on Aspirations, skill, and ultimately the key information document, totally buttoning that up tonight would be the expectation.
That's
And then when
correct.
we're done with all of that, we'll come back to Kathy's question, because we've talked about the interview process, and we've got to start to nail down dates that actually work for everybody. So that's the last thing that I have before we close off this part of the session. So if I can turn it over to Bob and Bob, you have the floor.
So what I want to do first is we're narrowing it down to the board aspiration statements. You received from 2 board members prior to the meeting. Catherine sent out her suggestions. I was able to incorporate them in as best I could, Catherine, and you could certainly disagree with where I put them and how I implemented them, but we installed those. Kevin, you sent some items. I've got those. Let me ask, you see those on your screen right now, correct? You've got, these are the current statements in the key information document. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, we have a side-by-side.
Yep.
Looks like.
So the one on the left is, Kevin, that is the email that you sent me just very recently. And so I would suggest that the board kind of walk through one at a time and just kind of look at the differences, make some choices. I'll take notes and be able to lock it up right now. So, for example, item 1, Kevin proposed this statement, very similar, got a slight change in the wording. And Kevin, you might want to share what your thoughts were on the adjustments.
Right, so I don't remember all the changes here between the two here. Let me just say, inspire and empower each student to reach their full potential as a foundation for achieving personal success in our dynamic society. It was trying to connect with students, and it was trying to really be aspirational in the sense of lifelong impacts on the people that we're here to serve.
So basically removed one of the verbs, I guess it was, up in the front. So inspire and empower, not inspire, engage, and empower. And then the as a foundation for achieving personal success.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I deleted engage.
Yep.
It was my belief that if you're inspiring somebody, they're engaged. By definition, they're engaged. So it was a little bit, you could argue, redundant, and tried to knock a word out of it.
So this one, if you took this statement over here, it would be remove engage, and in here to reach their full potential as a foundation for achieving, and then the rest of it's the same. Preference, thoughts?
Like Kevin's, especially the foundation for achieving personal success. That change, I think is a good one.
So that one right there. Any opposition from making that adjustment? Speak now or forever hold your peace, right? I'll make sure the grammar is correct, but foundation for achieving success. And is there any objection to removing the engage? Gone. I meant to get rid of the comma. So there's your first statement. The second one, I don't believe there was any changes. Catherine, you had changed program and experience to not have a match. The term educational experiences has value beyond where you are. If you can accept that notion, I put offer programs that engage every student to kind of balance that out. Obviously, we can change that back if you would prefer the other way. I can't hear you, Catherine. No, it's strange. Sometimes you can hear real clearly, and
I'm not sure which.
there you go.
I'm not sure which one you're suggesting. Are you suggesting the one on the right for number 2?
So the one I was wanting to capture, you had indicated to change this experiences to programs and leave this as experiences. And I'm kind of suggesting
That's fine.
yeah, that's what I was hoping that we do. So then be a recognized leader in delivering is the key, delivering innovative and relevant. So instead of responsive and innovative, so these are very, very close, slightly different wording over here. And again, Kevin, if you don't mind leaving that as experiences, educational experiences has value in the education world.
Yeah, experience or programs. I tried to actually incorporate Kathy's suggestion about not being repetitive. And I used essentially the same convention that she did, but we could flip flop that and I wouldn't be concerned about it.
Cool.
In mine, I just wasn't, I'm trying to see what this says here. In my own mind, I wasn't clear what responsive meant. So I replaced it with the word relevant. I'm not in love with either one, but that was the basis.
I think the original was the notion that you shouldn't be innovating for innovative's sake. You want to be responsive to the needs of students, the needs of the community, needs of the world was the word responsive, but relevant would have the same exact meaning.
Relevant works.
Okay. So the only other thing is delivering. The word delivering seems to be fairly minor. Be a recognized leader in delivering innovative, relevant educational program.
Yeah, I mean, one's talking about the superintendent. The other one is almost talking about the district. Be a recognized leader in responsive, et cetera, to me talks more about us as a district. Delivering, this was the way I was thinking about it, delivering makes it accountable to the superintendent.
I didn't understand that, Kevin. Do you think that it's the superintendent we're asking about?
No, I think Kevin was saying this is about the district. So why don't we take the one on the left and just change programs to experiences?
Is everybody comfortable with that?
Good by me.
And you have got it. Third one, provide every student with a memorable and positive school experience. Offer programs that engage every student in positive and memorable ways.
On that one, I prefer the one on the right. To me, the one on the left simply says that there's going to be some sort of memorable, positive experience that happens in school. And I don't think that's specific enough to what we do. We would offer programs, and that could include, as Michelle spoke to at one point, that could be like
I can't hear you, Catherine. I'm sorry that.
I prefer the one on the right because being a recognized leader, can you hear me now?
Yes, excellent.
The one that says provide every student with a memorable and positive school experience to me, could be speaking to the prom. It-
What's the preference?
Positive and memorable ways. And that covers the range of what we offer. So if there's another word other than programs, I simply prefer the right-hand one rather than the left-hand one.
You put
I was going to say the
programs and
same.
experiences?
I like the one that's on the right. And the only thing I can say is, is there a different word other than programs? And I don't know if there is or not. The one that came to my mind was opportunities. But I don't have a.
I like opportunities.
It's good.
Easy for me to spell. That work? We're down to fine adjustments. The number 4 now is significantly different, Kevin. So we'd want to spell out Loveland City School District. And I think you want to have a discussion about what each one of them means. When I read it as a third party external person, I read something different in the 4 in the left than the 4 in the right. So I'd suggest you have a conversation about those two.
Perhaps so. I was trying to, in a sense, maybe be a little bold about expectations for this individual. Putting a lot of confidence in this person, that they must be and will be trusted by the community, and they'll be an active and visible leader.
Oh, okay. So Kevin, let me help you a little bit. What we're talking about is start with the stem. Loveland City School District aspires to. It isn't about your superintendent. It's about the school district itself. I get it now, what you were writing. This isn't about it being a trusted and active leader. What it would describe to be a trusted and active leader, you're referring to leadership to the school district generally, which obviously plays out as a superintendent. Am I making sense of that?
You are making sense.
And those come up in the next thing we'll be talking about when we go over the qualities and characteristics.
Yeah, and you'll see my thinking on that repeated in that section as
Yeah.
well. So I'm fine with adjusting the perspective on this one.
So keep the one on the right then. The one on the right, I have to admit, it gives you the feeling that I hear in your voices and hear in your conversations that you don't want to be a separate above or below or apart from the community. You want to be engaged in a contributing partner with respect for everybody else in the system as being equals. Is that a fair assessment?
I think we're okay with the one on the right.
Okay.
Anybody?
And then the last one is provide a supportive, meaningful environment where effective educators practice, grow in profession. The only difference is a slight change. Again, we'd write out Loveland City School District staff provide them with a challenging, supportive, and purposeful environment with which they basically say the exact same thing, slightly different wording. Your preference?
I tried to broaden it out to essentially every employee of the district.
Ah.
I like the phrase challenging, supportive, and purposeful environment better than the phrase that's on the right.
Is that comfortable for everybody?
I just don't like the within which to grow in their profession. I like it where whoever they are, they practice and grow in their profession.
So let's try, if I hear, let's try doing this. Provide a challenging, supportive, and purposeful environment where effective educators and staff practice and grow in their profession. Is that?
I delete educators and just leave it staff, because then it's inclusive of everybody.
Gotcha.
I think then you need to say effective staff members.
Just staff.
I just don't like effective staff hanging out there by itself. Yeah,
Kathy, were you saying you'd rather see it say staff members?
I would rather see it say effective staff members practice and grow in their profession.
So read the whole thing.
It's what he's got there.
I'm okay.
Yes, no, maybe? I'm seeing a thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Looks like we got it. I can't see Eric's thumb, but I can see he's being kind. So you now have finished this task. I went ahead based on the conversation in the previous. I put in below this so that the candidates would know that you have these board commitments to students. So although the aspirations are valuable, this is work that you had done in the past and we honored that. So these came from, and I hope I've got the right one. I got to look or listen to Andrea, whether I've gotten the right ones pulled out. She certainly has provided the correct ones. So if there's any errors, it's on me. So next, questions. We good? All right. The next one.
Just hang on just a sec. Could you roll it back?
Yes.
Just so I can see the 5. Andrea, this looks right to me. Does it look right to you?
Yes, I was just double checking against the document I sent you, Mr. Summers. It looks correct.
Nothing like copying and pasting, Andrea, to keep me out of trouble.
There you go.
So then we move. Are you good, Kevin? We're in good shape.
I am. I'm just looking around. Everybody else is okay? Yep. Looks like we are.
So now we have 2 opportunities. So first of all, you have a whole raft of documents, lots of details. So if you wanted to go to the source documents, and I'll pull one across that is probably the most prominent. We did a lot of surveys and work that'll be valuable to you going beyond what we're doing right now, picking the superintendent. In fact, the new superintendent, whoever that person is, probably will find this valuable information. But we had thought exchange feedback. Are we making progress? Student surveys, student performance, key information, NPS scores, as you recall, weren't bad, but they weren't exciting. Aspiration statements, you hone them in. And so what you have is you have these spots where, for example, performance focus is going to be a high priority if you pay attention to the detail. It's not important that you pay attention to the detail. I just wanted you to see how all this detail goes together to kind of paint a clear picture. Student and stakeholder satisfaction engagement is really big. Program and service offerings. So use this as you see fit. Also, we gave you a lot of the feedback from those hundreds of people that wanted and got the opportunity. We had 1,071 individuals that were involved in the survey work around the question of what the candidates should have. Again, this is not for you to dwell on in great detail. It was for you to be informed as a board. What's your district telling you? What are you hearing, or what did we hear from the focus groups? Here is the CAG. I went ahead and took the community advisory group and I put up the 8, and they're in order by level of vote. So the highest priority was problem solver. The terminology, I tried to make it parallel. So they're communicator, collaborator, community-minded, leader, student-focused, visionary, and future-focused. I tried my very best not to deviate from what the intent or the wording was from the community advisory group. You'll see the narrative. Many of those came straight from the actual thoughts that were highly rated. So this one is kind of is the community's summary, to the extent that the community advisory group represents your community. It is the community's summary of what they discovered in all the data that you have. So I'm going to put this off to the side because, quite frankly, I found Kevin's to be very skillfully done, and I don't normally pass judgment on board members, but in this case, Kevin, I have to tell you, it's a first for me to see your work. Let me.
I would agree. I like Kevin.
I
have a couple of typos or word edits, but I really like the way, I found this to be a huge amount of information, quite overwhelming, and how to put it together. And I really feel like Kevin came up with a statement that brings it all together really well. I liked it a lot.
Thank you.
And what you'll find if you take a look at these 3 key areas and you compare them to the community advisory group, remember they were ranking them in order, but you'll see leader, student focused, visionary, outstanding leadership capabilities, and you see a lot in this follow-on statement that matches surprisingly well all the way around. Innovative, maybe not a problem solver directly, but certainly implied in the leadership skills, and richly student focused. I especially fierce advocate on their behalf of students, and you see that student focus in the community advisory group. So what I would suggest is you've got a single document that a fellow board member produced for you, that if you found favor, have a conversation about these 3.
Bob, if I could, there's, I tried to just digest all the detail, step back from it, and think about the messages that were in there. And I did take the liberty, I guess I get to do this, of emphasizing something that didn't come out loud and clear in all the feedback, but I personally felt was incredibly necessary for an effective leader and essentially the CEO of a fairly large organization here. And that's the ability to deliver results through other human beings. A lot of the comments, a lot of the feedback seem to be asking for this individual to be the problem solver, so to speak. And my experience is that you might get lucky and find somebody who's incredibly gifted in that respect, but it's far more powerful if you find somebody who brings that out of others.
That's right.
This person doesn't need to be the center of the show because they create excellence in everybody around them. This individual creates excellence in everybody around them. And the power of the team is massively more impactful than an individual, but that's kind of the spirit of a lot of this. And I did try to mentally check off the key themes that were in the feedback, but say it a little differently.
And I want to reinforce, and we're doing a superintendent search for you. We also do lots of high-end strategic planning and working with organizations. And oftentimes communications is what somebody identifies, and you saw that come up a lot. But oftentimes communications is a symptom of an underlying problem. And I think, Kevin, you've captured it, the ability to have an outstanding leader that can project a vision that people can rally around. Now, you still have to communicate, but you're not communicating about the minutia or the disagreements. You're communicating about the opportunities before you. So I'm just well done. So the rest of the group, what are you thinking? Do you want to look at other things? Do you want to work beyond this? What's missing from your perspective?
You may want to add to that.
Yep.
Eric,
How would you like to proceed?
Well, I can say that I feel pretty good about this as a basis for selecting or helping candidates select themselves for this position going forwards. My homework was much like Kathy's, where I'm overwhelmed by the amount of information here. So I have a list of keywords, but Kevin did the job much better than I did.
Okay. Other thoughts?
If Kevin would permit a couple of word changes. In the outstanding leadership capability represented by a person who is trusted, I know that is accepted grammatically, but it still bothers me tremendously. So if it's who
Have
is
to say
trusted,
that
what?
fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Kraft, will be very proud of you. That's what they are working on in class currently.
So that's the only word I would change in the first one, represented by a person who.
Let me do something here. Let's see. I'm going to live to regret that one if I almost did it, but I don't want to do that. So I'm going to actually paste these in. Get them a little bigger. And you wanted this to be who?
Yes. And then in richly student-focused, is energized by the challenge of helping every student achieve their best, and who acts as a fierce advocate on their behalf. Or just and acts as, yes. Is fierce spelled correctly?
At least Bill Gates believes it is.
Okay. Eileen will check for me. And then in innovative, inspires great unanticipated solutions by thoughtful balancing of available resources with the most critical needs, and by leading teams to create answers that are practical and effective. Are those okay? I'm
Totally.
just suggesting those as.
I think they're great improvements.
Okay.
So what was the English direction? Who is kicking whom? Is that what, that was the big building block of grammar, right? So you realize that you could set a world's record for fastest skills development, decision-making.
Thanks, Kevin.
You're welcome. I'm having to pay back all the time I've taken prior to tonight.
So Michelle, does it look good? Eileen?
I think you have to change effect to A effect.
What's that?
You have to change effects to effect when you use it as a verb.
I'm lost, Bob. Help me out.
Where you say effects in there, it has to be AFFECTS. because it's a verb.
I'm not finding effects. That's my problem. Right here,
Yeah.
regulate affects change through others. Catherine, you good? Eileen, you're the word on that one. What do you?
Well, they're sorting that one out.
For some reason, I don't hear you again, Catherine. I want to really badly.
All right. Effect
There you go.
as a verb means to bring about or to cause something to happen. So effect is correct.
Whoa.
Close this up. Could I ask Brad and the senior staff that's here for any feedback on this?
I think it looks great. I mean, I think you've done and great work is being done on it.
Everybody comfortable?
Eric? Eric?
Then we have one final thing to do, and that is select some dates. Let me bring back the calendar. What did I do with my calendar? Hang on just a second.
So Bob, if you could help us think this through, the beginning time frame that we need to start this, and recognizing that some of the dates that you have here won't work for us. So try to give us some thinking about when and how long.
Yeah, just a second. So what we're trying to get dates for are, let me shrink this just a little bit. What we're trying to get dates for are starting right here. So it's the board and CAG review anonymous potential candidate report. The earliest we can, so the target is at the end of May is where you're trying to get the final board approval. You can change that as the board. That's your choice. And a lot of boards get nervous about, all the good candidates will be gone before I get there, but that rarely actually happens. You'll have people hired year round. I'll give you Xenia. Xenia hires their superintendent in October, typically October and November, and they find no difficulty making things work. The reason I say that is not because we want to work till November, but because that deadline is less important than it is a guidepost. So you have one meeting where you're going to review the materials, and you're going to collectively between the community advisory group and the board, we'll do them independently, and we'll give you rubrics to work on. And before the evening is out, you will have a very logical cut point for creation of candidate interview, of selection of candidates. So that's your first date. This is a Monday. If you don't want to do it on a Monday, if you've got a board meeting that's a couple of days away from that, the only thing you do is when you move this date closer to this date, we then may have more difficulty getting your candidates scheduled.
Bob, the required column is hours, or is that?
That's days required. That's my formulas. So
So how much time, if we're on line 42?
line 42,
Yeah.
you are talking about typically you're talking about a 2-hour, you're going to have about 40 pages of material that we can send to you in advance. And then you can review that material and you come prepared to say, these are the candidates. If you want to think of it in simple terms, it's a resume on steroids.
All right, so we have a working meeting on the 4th.
Yep, the 4th would be fine. You would probably want to avoid having any other business items there because it's going to be a time-consuming task.
You want to borrow this?
Do you hear me now, Bob?
Yes.
I feel like the 4th is needed as a board meeting, and that
Okay.
if board members are available on the 3rd, it would be better to have a separate meeting.
Smart.
So let's see here. Eric, are you available on the 3rd?
Yes, I can do the 3rd and the 4th.
Okay. And Kathy, I assume you're good on the 3rd.
Yes.
I am.
Michelle?
What time? Would you prefer 6 o'clock in the evening or? So 6 o'clock in the evening on the 3rd is on the
Would
table.
earlier be better, Michelle? Okay.
Eileen? Eileen's still checking here.
Just so you guys know, the month of May, my daughter is due with a baby, so it will be what it is, and I can't change that. So she's just due. Yeah, I mean, we can't plan around a baby.
Okay, so Bob, I think the board is okay with May 3rd at 6 p.m. for line 42.
And at that same meeting, we'll work with you to create your candidate interview questions so you're ready for the interviews at the same time.
So are we saying that lines 42, 3, and 4 are all
Same
done in
meeting. Yep,
a 2-hour block, right?
you got it. 2.5 hours.
Okay, next one is what, line 47?
47.
The 9th is a Sunday.
Yeah, that's the reason these are just suggestions. So if you want to move that to and by the way, you probably ought to pick a couple of dates because if you happen to find 12 candidates that you really liked and you wanted to go through the first pass, you're talking basically 12 hours of interviews. We encourage you to get it down to 6 or 7, but you just may find that you like a lot of them. So I would suggest 2 dates.
So Bob, give us some guidance here. Are you suggesting 2 6-hour?
Yeah, I would say that that's what you're looking for. And I don't know what your schedules are. I mean, if it's possible to start those at 4 o'clock instead of 6, that's a much better evening. Most candidates would be available at any time you wanted them.
Again, I'm just trying to get practical here. Your recommendation would be 4 p.m. to 10 p.m.
That's right.
That would be the recommendation.
Yep. And we can always cancel one of them if you have fewer candidates that you want to.
In your experience, I don't know what kind of condition we'll be in at 10 o'clock at night, but candidates being acceptable to being interviewed at 10 o'clock at night or 9?
That's not atypical, right, Bob?
No, it's not atypical. They'll range their schedules. They'll accept those times.
Depending on how you want to work it, remember you're probably looking at a virtual interview at this stage. If you want to have it live, that's great, but virtual may be an option as well. So you have to kind of make that choice. We've done it virtually before and it worked beautifully.
Bob, if we, let's put it out on the table of May 10 and 11, 4 p.m. through the rest of the evening, let's say. Michelle is not able to commit, but we'll be okay with it if we plan it, correct?
I do the remote learning homeschooling with my granddaughter and take her, my daughter's due to have delivery and I have this child. I'm probably gonna, if I can do it remotely, I can commit more to that.
Mm-hmm.
I have that 7-year-old.
Right, understand. I think Bob just said this would likely be remote.
Okay.
Yeah, I would encourage you to do it remote. It makes it easier for everybody. It causes less consternation. You don't know where the COVID virus is going to be. I mean, we like to think where it is, but we don't know. So,
right.
And you could have candidates all over the state, even outside of the state.
Okay, I'm just going around the table here, guys. 10th and 11th, Kathy, works for you. Eileen? Eric?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
I'm sorry, couldn't hear.
4 o'clock is a little bit rough to start, but we'll figure it out.
Okay, so to recap, we're talking about May 10 and 11, 4 p.m. through the rest of the evening. And I think everybody has said either do it or it can work.
I will either be able to be there or I won't.
Gotcha. Okay, so that covers, where are we at here? That covers lines, well, at least line 47.
that's right. It covers 47, 48, 49. So then we're assuming that you don't find the perfect candidate and want to make an offer that day. So we plan for you to bring back 2 or maybe 3 people. It's going to be a single date. Targets around the 13th. You move this to the 10th, the 11th. I don't think it's a problem. The one question you have is some boards like to see a community engagement occur in the afternoon. So you bring the people in live and have a public engagement that we can work out the details, and then that late afternoon, evening, you interview those 3 candidates, 2 or 3 candidates. So that's this one right here. May 13th is the target.
I'm sorry to be difficult, but I'm out of town from May 13th to 17th.
Okay.
The 13th, Chuck is booked.
It could give us a little more time to get the CAG also has to interview those people that you choose to interview. So
that's right.
Give us a couple of days in there.
So May 18th would be fine.
We have a business meeting that evening.
Oh.
Ah.
I don't think we can, I don't think we can do without a May business meeting.
So again, Bob, if we do it on the 19th, how many hours are we looking at?
You're typically looking at, depending on how many if you do 2 or 3, you typically are looking at 4 to 5 hours. You want to give time. Sometimes you don't use it all. Again, the idea would be something that started at 4 or 5, not 6 or 7.
And some of the time is discussion, the board having discussion about the candidates, especially at that level.
It takes you a while.
But we're talking about the 19th being the interviews of the finalists, correct?
That's correct. We're not using this. We're gonna move this one down. We're looking at this one right here. So you've got a community engagement with the finalists that will occur on the same day, if you choose. If you're really frustrated and you bring back 3 or 4, you might break it up into 2, but typically it doesn't happen. It's if you did this on May 19th, that's on a Friday though, right?
No, that's a Wednesday.
Wednesday. Okay, so May 19th from, let's say, 4 to 10 p.m. And this would be live. And you're looking at 2 or 3 candidates. If you do that on May 19th, this one is a backup. This one is if required. That would be after the 19th, you have 2 candidates and you can't come to agreement on, and you want to meet them again. Doesn't happen very often.
So let me go around the table again. The suggestion is May 19th, 4 p.m. through the rest of the evening. Michelle, I'm sure the same situation, right? Got it. Kathy, are you saying you're okay?
I'm okay with that. That's not when it would be community engagement. That's simply interviews with the board.
Right. The community engagement. Now remember, there's a community advisory group that's meeting. They'll meet at the exact same time you do, and they'll be interviewing the candidates. And at the end of the interviews, we're going to have rubrics that we can share with you. So there's going to be interaction, and for that matter, you could include them in your call after you get done with the interviews. I strongly recommend the board interview separate from the community advisory group. You're getting different information, different perspectives.
So just sake of argument for clarity here, Bob, we have 3 finalists.
Yes.
We're interviewing candidate A, the CAG is interviewing candidate B, then we flip, and then run candidate C through both.
You got it. And we handle that virtually and then live the same way. Now, the reason I said that on May 19th, if you're down to 2 or 3 at the most finalists, we would move this community engagement, which is optional for you, would be, it's typically in a non-COVID world, you would have an announcement to the community and they could just stop by and have tea, is how I would describe it. And oftentimes each candidate comes to the podium and presents. We've had the situation where the board, the community wanted to ask questions, and it's an open-ended question for the candidates. Okay. Typically, they meet together. They're in the same room. They're interacting with the same people. They usually take their corners in a room. It's a fairly large setting. COVID makes that very, very difficult to do. So one of the things you got to decide is how important is that to you?
Right. So again, Bob, let me just try to nail these dates down with everybody. We've just described activities on May 19, where we have same candidates. These are the finalists.
Yep.
Being interviewed separately by the board and by the CAG. All candidates reviewed by both groups, but it's in separate settings.
Yep.
And the suggestion is the 19th from 4 in the afternoon through the evening. And Kathy, I'm sorry, did you say you were okay on that?
On the 19th?
On the 19th?
Yes.
And Eileen? And Eric, I'm sorry, did I ask you already? Are you okay on the 19th?
I'm okay with the 19th.
Okay. So we'll nail the, what am I on here? This is line 50.
Right.
right, for the 19th. Okay. So then we have a backup date on line 51. Oh, no, I'm
Yep.
sorry. This is different, right? Only if required.
Only if required, and I would suggest that you hold the date and then you've got it, and if you don't need it, great.
And that date would be the 20th, presumably?
It should be at least, I would give yourself at least a day. So what's the 21st?
That's a Friday.
The 20th would work.
I'm not available on the 20th.
As a backup date, if we rolled into the following week, the week of the 24th.
Yeah, that's, you talk about rumors and rumors of rumors, right, Bob?
Yeah.
But it is what it is. You could do it on a Saturday.
I guess.
I was gonna say, what's the downside of a Friday, Saturday, Sunday for holding it for a unlikely occurrence?
It's up to the board. We're fine with it.
That particular weekend, I can't even make remote. I have to have Charlie out of town.
You couldn't do Friday
Nope.
afternoon earlier.
Possible.
Just
She
to
does
throw
school up.
just to throw a loop, I'm available on the Thursday, the 20th, between 1:30 and no, I'm not available at all. I have a 12:30, a 3, a 5:30, and a 7 already scheduled.
So let me go back.
If that Friday,
If we
if it's one remote, that's the only way that I could do it.
remote, I think is fine.
Because she's in school and I oversee that.
So if
at
we
my
did,
house.
where are we on? Friday, the 21st.
But Eileen's in school. Eileen teaches.
So daytime is a no-go. How about the,
I don't know.
What about 4 o'clock on Friday, the 21st?
I think I'm hearing 21st at 4 as the backup date.
May not need this.
Right.
Yes.
Hopefully we don't, but if we
Yeah.
need it, the
We can put it on
21st
there.
is the date.
But that's also the date that you were suggesting would be community engagement. So to me, I think community engagement needs to be something separate, because if you're going to have community engagement, you need to have enough time to announce that so that community knows that you're going to have community engagement.
We don't want
So
community. Friday.
the community engagement would be tied to your May 19th meeting. So we would have it either, and typically what you want, since you have candidates that are flying in, driving in, doing whatever, you normally do that like at 3 to 4, 2:30 to 4, and then you go into your interviews.
So the community would see presentations from these people before the board interviews them.
They would interact with the community, and you would decide how you wanted to get feedback from those community members, whether you wanted them to fill out a survey, whether you wanted them to give you a call, text message, whatever you want. Typically, board members try to be in attendance at this thing to see how the people interact with them and listen to conversations. It's a very informal process. Typically, we can make it more formal, but at some point it becomes a gauntlet on your talent.
I'm not sure that we're going to be ready, COVID-wise, to have tea on May 19th. I'm being a little sarcastic. I'm not trying to be, I'm just thinking we're not going to be ready for in-person on May 19th yet. I'm wondering, could we have the May 19th as a backup date as a date for us for interviews. Can we wait until our business meeting in whenever it is to have a little time to think about how we want community involvement and set that date on April 20th.
So one option that you could actually entertain with COVID, hadn't thought about this. When we did Canfields, they skipped this part because of COVID. I mean, they just simply didn't do it. But what you could do is on, say, the 18th, you have you chose your top 2 or 3 on May 10th and 11th. On May 18th, you could do a virtual community engagement, do a thought exchange tie, and have the candidates answer the questions that get the highest ratings or make comment on the hot top. We could put something together for you that would avoid COVID and actually would increase your chance of engaging the community tremendously.
Yeah, that's the right way to think about it, because I was thinking I would like to see community engagement, but there's no way that an in-person event works. So your thought is the right direction. Why don't you guys craft that a little bit, and then we'll talk about it in 2 weeks.
Yep, we can easily do that for you and come back. We don't need to do that right now.
And on the 18th, on May 18th, we do have a regularly scheduled business meeting, which we will need to have. So anything that is community engagement could be 4 to 6 or something like that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that takes care of line 52.
Yep. Then you want to make the decision. You need a window. You'll make the decision either on the 19th or the 21st. And then you'll want to make the offer to somebody, and you don't let anybody else know. I mean, it's the important thing is your first prime candidate, you're going to get them on the phone as quickly as you can.
So this is
Bob and he will work with your candidate and you to finalize decisions, but you'll want to make that offer, and then you'll want to make the final board selection that you're going to kind of want to know who your person is, but you're not going to hire them then. You're going to see if you can negotiate an agreement.
Interviews of board candidates are in executive session.
Yes.
Superintendent candidates, excuse me.
Yes. Absolutely.
Interviews of superintendent candidates are in executive session. It's a permissible.
Yes.
It's employment of personnel.
Yes. That's right.
So this is line 50 that we're talking about.
Pardon me?
Or line 47 and 50 are executive session.
I would suggest to you that this May 3rd, May 10th, May 19th, May 21st should all be an executive session.
Right.
Does the third need to be executive? Because that's anonymous, right?
It's anonymous, but you're going to want to have candid conversations about employment of staff.
What you can have after this, though, is you can announce those candidates that are
Yes.
going to the next level, and then that will be a nice way to involve the public because they'll see their qualification, a little blurb about each one of them. You should release them there.
All right.
That's right.
There is some, let me just be clear about this. The third has a CAG. I'm assuming that's a parallel.
Yes.
So there is community involvement despite
Yes.
us having an executive session on the
That's
3rd.
right.
Likewise on the 10th and
Yeah.
11th.
Yep.
And then
Right.
also on the 19th and 21st.
That's right.
Also, your community engagement with the finalists prior to talking to to the interviewing the finalists is really, that's genius. Most boards just have a little walkthrough, tea, whatever, and it really doesn't give them much information. You're going to get information prior to your final interview with these people. That's more than most boards get. And that's more involvement than most boards have, getting community feedback and then getting a chance to interview those finalists.
And then we don't have a date. I'm sorry. This is line 52 is what we're thinking of as the 18th, I think, right?
That's correct.
And that's definitely community involvement. That's what
Yep.
it's all about.
Yep. Really nice there.
And we'll come back with you on some details on what that'll look like so you get comfortable with it.
Okay, so I'm trying to keep everything straight here. Line 53 happens.
This happens on the 21st or the 19th. This will be the line 55 then is the board meeting where you hire the person, you make it official.
Yeah, it's really line 53 where we
Yep.
make a final determination. We talk about, I assuming we're talking about contract elements.
No, actually what you want to do on the 19th is you want to have your first line candidate. We will have discussions with you earlier about what package and what kind of arrangements that you're thinking about. So the negotiations occurs between the time you say, I want this candidate.
Right, that's where I'm at, Bob. I'm on
Yeah.
line 53 that says the board is making the final selection. I'm assuming that we have to come together and make that decision in an executive session, right?
And that's, I think what's confusing, this was a deadline. This is a step that has to be done. This is what will happen either on May 19th at the board meeting, or it'll happen on May 21st.
After the interviews.
Line 53, you will get done with your finalists and you will have a discussion. And if all goes well, you will decide on a candidate that you have selected, that board selection of the final candidate, which then triggers a negotiation.
And you will discuss, when you do the final candidate, you'll discuss what you would potentially offer them in the negotiations. You'll do that at that meeting prior to actually having that conversation with the candidate.
That's right.
Okay, I'm assuming we can get that done. I just can imagine that we're going to have a long, deep conversation about this big decision. And that's after interviews. So it's just looking like a long evening to me.
It will be, but if you remember, you will have seen these folks for a very long time. So a lot of your deliberations will have occurred along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And Kathy, maybe you looked at it, but final board approval and contract signing, I guess that could be on June 3rd then? Or that's a work meeting?
The final board approval could be at a regular board meeting. I mean, you're going to want to introduce them and congratulate them, but the amount of work that you've got at that point is.
Can we do that at a work meeting?
Do that on June 3rd. Is there any reason that we wouldn't want to, since we've set all these dates, that we wouldn't want to set the 27th as a possible meeting just to do that?
That would be great. I mean, that the sooner you get it done, the sooner you've got it done. And there's anything that can happen on the way to the circle, you know?
And then we can
Yeah, it's
cancel
best
it
to
if
close
we,
it down.
Good.
so if we set one more, Michelle, we just fill up your May?
I am not available the 27th. I'm available the 26th or the 28th.
One more time,
The
Eric.
chances of May
One more time, Eric.
I am not
26th.
available the 27th, but I am available the 26th or the 28th.
Works for me.
26th is probably better than the Friday because that's Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it. We just need to ask Eileen.
Why don't we set a meeting for 6 o'clock on May 26th? We can cancel it as we're moving through the rest of this.
You have that, Bob?
Yep.
Okay, does that give you all the dates that you need?
I've got all the dates that I need, I think, right, Bob?
Yeah, those are, and some of those dates, you may not use all those hours, so that'll be something we'll decide. You'll decide.
There's a
Have
whole bunch
tea.
of meetings in there.
We'll have tea.
There you go. There you go.
Okay,
English.
Bob and Bob, anything else that we need to talk about tonight?
We're good if you are.
Anybody on the board have any other issues? I'm sorry, Eileen's out right now. But Eric, anything else?
No, I was just thinking that I needed to send an email to Amy to thank her for this opportunity.
In the next couple of weeks, you may get a lot of questions. Please involve us so we don't, we want to be transparent as you do. And but there'll be, people will be antsy the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
About 6 months worth of meetings crammed into the next 2 months here.
And by all means, if there are questions or concerns, don't feel like you should know all the answers. Send them to us and we'll have the conversations with them.
Do you want to wait till Eileen comes back? Okay, Bob and Bob, we're going to wait for Eileen to come back before we move on. So bear with us for a moment.
They did surgery, and they put 10 staples in his leg. The vet said he's good for 15, but
Michelle, your mic's on.
that's okay.
And we will be with you during all those interviews, just as support, and with the CAG as well.
Yeah.
Michelle just brought up a point that on our website, the information that was posted on March 26th says the board will conduct public interviews of candidates, and I don't believe that that's correct information.
And further in the paragraph, it's this paragraph right here.
Oh, that makes me okay.
On the, where's it at on the website?
With the board and with the community, so I think that's okay. Yeah,
The CAG is
it's,
addressing that,
it
right?
says with interviews with the board and interviews with the community advisory group, it says them together, but I think that doing them separately is okay.
Mhm.
But I don't believe they will be public interviews. I believe they will be executive session interviews.
That's correct.
Correct. Did have a candidate ask that question too, so that would be good to correct.
So somebody needs to fix that on our website, right?
We'll check on that.
Okay.
Eileen, I think while we out, we talked about May 26th as a meeting, possibly. I think we said 6. Okay, was that all we needed to do, Kevin, when Eileen?
I think so. Anything else, Bob and Bob?
We're good.
We're done. We're good.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. And I'll turn it back
Thank
to
you
Kevin.
all. Good night.
Thank you too.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thank you all.
Bye.
All right, we then move to the last portion of our meeting. We will have, hopefully, a resolution to enter into an executive session. Those of you who are looking at our agenda will see that there is no board business to be conducted after the executive session. So I am looking for a motion to enter into executive session to consider the employment, demotion, or dismissal of a public employee or official, preparing for and reviewing negotiations or bargaining session with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment, and conference with an attorney concerning disputes that are a subject of pending court action. Ms. Pettit moved. Is there a second? Mrs. Washburn seconded. And that is not, I don't believe that's discussable under Robert's rules. So at this point, we would have a roll call to enter into executive session for those three subjects that I read earlier. Mr. Hawley, can we vote on that?
Ms. Pettit,
Yes.
Dr. Swetchenow,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn, Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes, motion carried. I have us going into executive session at 9 p.m.
We don't actually have to leave the meeting out because, well, unless we're going to stay in here. Yeah, so you're going to pause the meeting now?